The chapel sits at the end of a wet country road, North Carolina, March. Inside 11 people, a pine casket, a pastor mispronouncing a middle name. In the front pew, a 19-year-old girl, borrowed black dress, shoes too tight, $47 folded in a wallet she has not opened in 3 days. In the back of the chapel, a man stands with his arms crossed, boots dusty, his brother's eyes in a face that is not his brother. He is waiting. She does not yet know for what. 3 weeks from now, an old Bible will fall open on a bare kitchen counter. A folded paper will slip from between 2 pages, and a 7-year secret will start to speak. The funeral was on a Tuesday in March. 11 people came. That was all. Eliza Bellwether sat in the front pew, 19 years old, wearing a black dress borrowed from a girl at work named Tanya. The hem was too long. The shoes were too tight. None of it mattered. The pastor mispronounced her father's middle name. James became Jameson. Eliza didn't correct him, because what would be the point now? Wendell was gone. Whether his middle name was pronounced right or wrong wouldn't bring him back. He had died on a Tuesday too. Heart attack, 52 years old, carrying drywall up a flight of stairs for a client over in Cary. His left arm went numb at the 3rd step. The paramedics said it was fast, said he probably didn't suffer. Eliza didn't know if that was supposed to make her feel better. She had been at the Shell station when the call came, stalking the cigarette display. The manager handed her the phone with a strange look on his face, like he already knew, like maybe the dispatcher had told him first. "Honey," he said, "it's about your dad." She knew before the woman on the line said the words. She knew. In the back of the funeral chapel, Uncle Vernon stood with his arms crossed. He hadn't come to the front, hadn't shaken her hand, hadn't said anything when she'd looked back at him. Just stood there, like he was waiting for something. Eliza didn't know what. She would, soon enough. The apartment was empty by midnight after the service. Wendell had lived there with her since she was 12. 2 bedrooms above a laundromat. The dryer vents underneath made the kitchen warm in winter. The walls were thin. You could hear the elderly couple next door arguing about Wheel of Fortune at 6 every night. She loved that apartment. It smelled like her father. Cedar shavings, Old Spice, coffee gone cold on the counter. She walked through it in the dark that first night, touched the door frame where he'd marked her height in pencil every year until she was 16, and told him to stop. The marks were still there, crooked little dates beside them. May 14th, 2018, June 2nd, 2017. She ran her thumb over them like Braille. She didn't cry. She'd already done that. In the shower, in her car, in the storage closet at the gas station between customers. By midnight she was hollow, scraped clean. She sat at the kitchen table in her father's flannel shirt and waited for morning. Vernon came back 3 weeks later. It was a Saturday, April 4th. She remembered that later because the calendar on the fridge had a red circle around April 12th. Her father had marked it. She didn't know what for. She was packing boxes when she heard the diesel engine outside. She knew that sound, that truck, her father's truck. She moved to the kitchen window and pulled back the curtain. The Ford F250, backing up a flatbed trailer into the parking lot. Vernon in the driver's seat, a woman in the passenger seat, scrolling her phone like she was waiting at a drive-thru. Lorraine, Vernon's wife. Eliza had met her twice in her whole life. Eliza's stomach dropped. She met him at the door. "What are you doing here?" Vernon didn't look at her. He walked past her into the apartment like he'd lived there himself. Boots on the kitchen floor, straight through to the back room where Wendell had kept his tools. "Your daddy owed me money." How much? 8,000. He'd said 4,000 at the funeral. He hadn't said anything specific then. Just stood there, but now it was 8. He never mentioned owing you anything. Well, he did. Vernon was already loading the rolling toolbox onto a dolly, the Milwaukee drill set, the table saw, the welding rig her father had saved 2 whole years to buy. Eliza watched it disappear out the door one piece at a time. You got papers saying he owed you. Vernon stopped, looked at her for the first time. His eyes were her father's eyes. That was the worst part. You got papers saying he didn't, she didn't, so he kept loading. He took the truck keys off the hook by the door, the keys to her father's Ford, took them like he was reaching for his own, took the kitchen table next, said he'd built it 15 years ago and was just getting it back. She stood in the doorway with her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. She wasn't cold. She was something else. She didn't have a word for it yet. He made 3 trips, maybe 4. She lost count. When the apartment was almost empty, he paused at the door on his last trip out, his hand on the frame, sweat on his upper lip. He glanced at the bookshelf, at the worn leather Bible sitting between a stack of utility bills and a coffee mug with a chipped rim. You can keep your daddy's church stuff. That's what he said. Church stuff. Then he left. Eliza sat on the floor for a long time after the engine sound faded down the street. The apartment felt gutted, walls bare where pictures had been, corners empty, the kitchen table gone, just 4 little dents in the linoleum where the legs had been, the hook by the door swinging on its screw. She didn't cry. She'd done that already. She felt nothing, which was worse somehow. The landlord had given her 30 days. The lease was in Wendell's name. She had no credit, no cosigner, a part-time job at a Shell station that paid $11 an hour. She'd already done the math. Even a studio apartment over in Garner would eat her entire paycheck before groceries. She had $47 in her wallet, $47 to her name. That was it. It was past midnight when she finally got up off the floor. She made instant coffee with water she heated in the microwave because Vernon had taken the kettle too. She didn't know why he'd taken the kettle. It wasn't worth anything. Maybe just because he could. She sat at the counter. The counter wasn't a real counter. It was a strip of laminate screwed to the wall, the kind that came with the apartment. She pulled the Bible toward her. She wasn't religious. Wendell hadn't been either. Not really. Not the kind of religious that takes you to church every Sunday. But he had kept this Bible on the shelf her whole life. She had seen him open it sometimes, late at night when he thought she was sleeping, turning pages slowly, like he was looking for something specific. Or someone. She opened it now. The spine cracked. The pages were thin and translucent, edges soft from years of handling. She turned the pages slowly. Genesis, Exodus, the book of Job, where someone had underlined a verse in pencil. Naked, I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. Her father's handwriting in the margin. One word, same. She turned more pages. Psalms. Right between Psalm 91 and Proverbs 31, the pages caught, because something was tucked between them, a piece of paper folded twice, so thin it had almost blended with the pages. She pulled it out. She unfolded it. A deed, stamped by the Pickens County Clerk's office, dated 7 years ago, 2 acres, Lot 14, Miller Creek Road, Cedar Hollow, North Carolina. The name on the deed was Wendell James Bell Weather. The purchase price was $340. She read it 3 times, then a 4th. Then she sat very still and let her breath out slowly through her nose. Her father had owned land, 2 acres, of something, somewhere, for 7 years, and he had never said a word. She turned the page. Behind the deed was a second piece of paper, a hand-drawn map, her father's block lettering, every letter pressed hard into the paper like he'd been worried it might disappear. Cedar Hollow, 40 miles north of Garner. Take Highway 1 to County Road 42, hang a left at the Baptist Church, 2 miles of gravel, lot 14, east side of the road. Look for the break in the trees, a small X, the number 14. She stared at it. Every Saturday morning for 7 years, her father had kissed her forehead and said he was picking up side work. Every Saturday evening he had come home tired, sawdust in his hair, hands raw, and she had assumed he was hanging cabinets for someone or reframing somebody's garage. 7 years, 360 Saturdays. Whatever was at the end of Miller Creek Road, her father had been building it, in secret, for 7 years. She sat with the deed in her hands until her coffee went cold. Then she went into the bedroom that had been hers, pulled a backpack out from under the bed, stuffed in 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, underwear, socks, her toothbrush, a wool sweater that had belonged to her father, the only piece of his clothing Vernon hadn't thought to take. She put the Bible in last, on top, wrapped in a t-shirt to protect it. Then she sat on the edge of the empty bed and watched the sky go gray. She didn't sleep. By 6 in the morning, she was at the Greyhound station. The ticket to Durham cost $19. She had 28 left. The bus left at 7. She watched Garner disappear behind her through a smeared window. The town she had grown up in, the street she had walked since she was old enough to walk, the Shell station with her name still on next week's schedule, the cemetery where her father had been buried 3 weeks ago. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't know how to. From Durham, she caught a county connector bus that dropped her at a Texaco station in Cedar Hollow a little after noon. She stepped off the bus into a town she had never seen before. One main street, a hardware store, a diner with a hand-painted sign that said Sue's, a Baptist church with white paint and a steeple that needed retouching, a post office, a feed store, the kind of town that noticed you, the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and they'd all see you before you saw them. She stood on the sidewalk with her backpack over one shoulder. Her stomach growled. She ignored it. She had seen Crawford Hardware from the bus window. Right across the street, the lights were on. She crossed. A bell jingled when she pushed the door open. The store smelled like sawdust and motor oil and something faintly sweet, maybe pipe tobacco. Long shelves of bolts and screws sorted into cardboard bins, coils of copper wire hanging from pegs, a wall of paint cans behind a counter at the back. A man stood behind that counter. 60s maybe, thick arms, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, a name patch sewn onto his apron. Harlan. He looked up from his newspaper. He studied her for a long second. His face changed, just slightly, just enough that she noticed. "Help you find something," he said. "I'm looking for Miller Creek Road." He set the newspaper down, took the reading glasses off his head, and folded them carefully on the counter. "You Wendell's girl." Her stomach dropped. "I am." "You found the Bible." It wasn't a question. She just nodded. He nodded back, slowly, like he had been waiting 7 years for someone to walk through that door and say exactly what she had just said. "I heard he passed 3 weeks ago. I'm real sorry, honey. He was a good man." The way Harlan said it, like he meant it, like he had known her father in a way that nobody at the funeral had known him. Eliza didn't trust her voice, so she didn't use it. She just stood there. Harlan came around the counter. Sit down. He pulled a wooden stool out from behind the register and set it down on the customer side. She sat. He poured coffee from a thermos into a paper cup. Black. No cream. He didn't ask. She drank it anyway. How long did you know him? 7 years, Harlan said. Came in every Saturday morning like clockwork. 6:55 sharp. Waited for me to unlock the door. Picked up whatever he needed. Then he was gone. Never stayed for small talk. Wasn't much for small talk anyway. He bought materials from you for 7 years. Lumber, drywall, roofing nails, wire, pipe, insulation. He bought everything that went into that house from this store. Paid full price every single time. I tried to give him a discount once. He wouldn't take it. Said he wanted to earn it. Eliza swallowed. Her throat was tight. Where is it? Harlan studied her face for another long second. Then he pointed. Take this road east out of town, past the church, hang a left at the fork. Gravel road goes about 2 miles. Lot 14 is on the right. You'll see a break in the tree line. Driveway's grown over a little. He hadn't been out there in 3 weeks. She nodded, stood up, picked up her backpack. You got money for a cab, sweetheart. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Harlan reached under the counter, pulled out a bag of jerky, a bottle of water, a roll of duct tape, which she didn't understand at first. For the door frame, he said. There's a window in the back you can climb through if the door's locked. The duct tape's for when you put the plastic back over. He pressed all 3 things into her hands. How much, like on the house? I can pay you back. I know you can and you will. Come see me Monday morning. I might have work for you. She didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing she could. Thank you. He nodded. She turned for the door. Eliza. She turned back. It's not the first time your name's been spoken in this town. It's just the first time anyone's spoken it to your face. Her eyes burned. She walked out before he could see. She walked 4 miles in sneakers that were already wearing thin. The afternoon was warm, early April. Dogwoods blooming along the roadside, white and pink, like somebody had spilled flowers across the trees. Past the church, past the fork, onto a gravel road that narrowed as the trees pressed in on both sides. 2 miles of gravel. Her feet ached. Her backpack dug into her shoulders. The wool sweater inside it kept catching on the strap. She counted mailboxes. There were only 2 on the entire road, both rusted, both for lots that looked long abandoned. Then she saw it. The break in the tree line, a dirt path just wide enough for a truck, tire tracks worn into the earth from years of use, now growing over with new spring grass. 3 weeks of no one driving in. She stopped at the mouth of the path, stood there, breathing, because once she turned in, once she walked down that path, whatever was at the end of it would become real. Whatever her father had built would stop being a secret and become a thing she had to hold. She wasn't sure she was strong enough to hold it. She turned in anyway. The path curved through a stand of pines, maybe 100 yards. The light dappled through the branches and fell across the dirt in patches of gold and shadow. Then the trees opened, and she saw it. In the middle of the clearing, on a slight rise, sat a structure, not a ruin, not a shack, a house, small, unfinished, but a house. She stopped. Her legs felt strange, like the ground had shifted underneath her. The frame was solid, real lumber, not the cheap stuff. The roof was complete, dark shingles, straight lines, walls sheathed in plywood on 3 sides. One side fully finished in clapboard siding, painted a pale, soft blue, the color of a clear sky 30 minutes before sunrise. A framed-out porch with no railing yet, no steps either, just raw 2x6s suspended 3 feet off the ground like the house was floating on a small wooden cloud. She walked toward it, slowly, like the house might disappear if she got too close. It didn't. It got more real with every step. She reached the porch. She could see now that the front door was a piece of plywood, padlocked, a handwritten note nailed beside it, faded by sun and weather. If you're reading this, you found it. Go around back. In her father's handwriting. Block letters, all capitals, like he had known, like he had written this knowing she would come. She felt something crack open inside her chest. She walked around the side of the house, through knee-high grass, past a stack of lumber covered with a blue tarp, past a wheelbarrow turned upside down, past a galvanized bucket with rainwater pooled in the bottom. At the back of the house, a window, no glass yet, plastic sheeting stapled to the frame, the edges curled where the staples had rusted. She peeled it back. She looked inside. One room was finished, completely finished. Drywall painted a soft, warm white. A wood floor sanded smooth and sealed. A window on the east wall with actual glass in it, facing east, toward where the morning sun would come. A cot against one wall, a folded wool blanket on top, a plastic bin with a camp stove on it, a lantern on a small shelf. The shelf, mounted at exactly her height. She knew because she had stood next to her father in the kitchen 100 times. He put a sticker on the kitchen wall when she was 12, the top of her head. He'd updated it every year. She knew her own height the way she knew her own name. The shelf in this room was mounted at 5'3", her exact height. She climbed through the window. The room smelled like sawdust and pine and something faintly familiar, the old spice and lumber smell she had known her whole life, her father's smell. She stood in the middle of the finished room and pressed her hands to her face. She didn't cry. She wasn't sure she had any crying left. She just stood there, breathing him in. She turned in a slow circle. That's when she saw it. Above the door, above the inside of the door, where you'd see it every time you entered the room. A small piece of cedar sanded smooth, letters burned into the wood, careful, deep, hand-carved with a wood burner, the kind her father had bought at a hobby store when she was 10 and had used to make her a name plaque for her bedroom door at the apartment. Eliza's room. That was it. Just those 2 words, carved by her father, for her, in a house she had never known existed, in a room he had finished while she had been at the gas station counting cigarettes. She sank to her knees on the wood floor he had sanded, in the room he had built for her, in the house he had spent 7 years on, and she finally cried, not the way she had cried in the shower, not the way she had cried in her car. This was something else. This was the kind of crying that comes from a body that has finally understood it was loved more than it ever knew. She didn't know how long she stayed on that floor. The light through the east window shifted from gold to amber to the deep orange of late afternoon. Birds called outside. Somewhere far off a tractor rumbled across a field. She got up eventually, because she had to, because the body keeps moving even when the heart doesn't know how. Under the cot, she could see the edge of a notebook, a spiral-bound composition book, the kind her father used to keep for his jobs. Always had one in the truck, always had a pencil clipped to it. She knelt, pulled it out. The cover was stained with paint and coffee rings, worn soft from being opened and closed 1,000 times. She opened it to the first page, block letters, all capitals, the way he always wrote, Eliza's house, started April 2019. She turned the page, measurements, lists, costs broken down to the penny, cedar siding $87, roofing nails $12, window unit east bedroom $41 used, 2x4s 8 foot $4.18 each, bought 30. She turned another page, and then she saw them, between the building notes, scattered throughout, like they had come to him while he was working. Messages. To her. Page 4. Eliza's room, east window. So she gets the morning light. She always said she wanted to wake up with the sun. She forgot saying that to me. I didn't forget. She turned the page. Page 11. Porch will face south. Big enough for 2 chairs. She'll want a dog someday. She's wanted one since she was 6. I had to tell her no because the apartment didn't allow them. Out here she can have 10 if she wants. She turned the page. Page 19. Kitchen almost framed. Small, but she doesn't need big. She just needs hers, something that belongs to her, and nobody else. Nobody can take it. Nobody can ask her to leave it. It's hers. She read until the light through the east window faded to nothing. She didn't have a flashlight. She didn't have a phone charger. She had $47 and a backpack and a deed and a house her father had been building in secret for 7 years. She pulled the wool blanket around her shoulders. It smelled like him. Of course it did. She heard it before she saw it. A soft sound. Outside the window. Careful feet in the grass. Then a shape at the window where the plastic sheeting still hung half open from where she had climbed through. A dog, medium-sized, brown and white, one ear torn at the tip, ribs showing through matted fur, the kind of dog that had been on its own for a long time. It stood at the window and looked at her with dark, cautious eyes. She didn't move. The dog didn't move either. A long moment, then it climbed through the window, like it had done that 100 times, like it knew the way. It walked 3 careful circles in the corner of the room and lay down with a heavy sigh. She watched it. It watched her. You knew him too, she said. The dog put its head on its paws, closed its eyes, like the answer was so obvious it didn't need to be spoken. She pulled the blanket tighter. Through the east window, she could see stars, more stars than she had ever seen from the apartment in Garner, the kind of stars that made you understand why people used to believe the heavens were full of something watching. She opened the notebook again, held it close enough to read by the faint starlight from the window. She turned to the last entry, page 23. Dated 2 weeks before her father died. Almost done. Give it to her on her 21st birthday. She'll fight me on it. She'll say it's too much. She'll cry. She might even be angry. But she needs to know. She needs to know I saw her every day. I saw her work 2 jobs. I saw her never complain. I saw her grow up with less than she should have had. I saw her. She doesn't know how much I saw her. But she will. She closed the notebook, held it against her chest, in the dark room, in the house her father had built, in the silence that wasn't silence anymore. She made a decision. She woke to sunlight in her face. For 3 seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt the wool blanket, smelled the sawdust, remembered the east window, her father's cot, the house. The dog was gone. The plastic sheeting over the back window hung still. She sat up slowly, looked around the finished room in daylight. It was different with the sun coming through. The walls were painted evenly, no drips, no missed spots. The wood floor was sanded smooth in a pattern she could now see followed the grain of each board. In one corner, a small shelf held 3 cans of beans, a box of matches, a jar of peanut butter with the lid screwed on tight. Emergency supplies. Her father had stocked the room like he had expected someone to show up with nothing. He had expected her. She didn't know how to feel about that. She ate peanut butter on her fingers and drank water from a jug she found under the camp stove. Then she stood up and walked out of the bedroom into the rest of the house to see what else her father had built. The house was bigger than it had looked from outside. 2 bedrooms, one finished, one framed with pink fiberglass insulation visible between the studs, a bathroom roughed in with PVC pipes stubbed through the subfloor, a toilet sitting unconnected in the middle of the room like it was waiting for somebody to give it a job to do, a kitchen. She stood in the kitchen and turned slowly. Hand-built cabinets, pine, sanded smooth and sealed, not painted yet, countertops marked in pencil where her father had planned to set them, a window over the sink looking out toward the tree line. He had put a window over the sink because he had known she would stand there washing dishes, and he had wanted her to have something to look at. She heard the sound of tires on gravel. She froze. Then she walked to the front of the house, looked out through a gap in the plywood. An old green pickup was coming up the dirt path, moving slowly, like the driver wasn't sure she had the right place. It stopped at the edge of the clearing. A woman got out. She was in her 70s, small, silver hair cut short, a flannel shirt tucked into jeans that had seen years of work, boots that had seen years of mud. She stood by her truck for a moment, studying the house. Then she looked at the front door. She didn't try to come up to it. She just stood there. Eliza walked outside, came around the side of the house. The woman saw her. Her face changed, softened, like something she had been holding inside for 3 weeks just gave way. "Well," the woman said, "I was wondering when you'd show up. Who are you?" "Miriam Whitley. I live 2 miles that way." She pointed east. "I've been watching this property since your daddy stopped coming 3 weeks ago. Figured something had gone wrong. Then I heard from Harlan. He called me last night, said you'd come into the store." Eliza's throat tightened. "You knew my father, knew him 7 years. He never mentioned anyone out here. He never mentioned much of anything to anyone. He was quiet that way." Miriam walked closer, moved with the careful steadiness of someone whose body had started making demands her mind didn't entirely agree with. She stopped 10 feet from Eliza. She looked at her for a long moment. "You look just like him." Eliza didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing she could think of. "Thank you." Miriam smiled, a small smile, a sad one. "He was close," she said. "Another few months maybe. You knew what he was doing." "I knew he was building. Watched him drive in every Saturday morning for 7 years. First year, I thought he was a hunter. Then I saw the lumber deliveries. Then I saw the roof going up. I brought him coffee one morning, maybe year 3. Just walked over with a thermos and said hi. He was shy about it at first, didn't want to explain. But after a while, he told me." "Told you what?" Miriam looked at her. Her eyes were kind, the kind that comes from a long life of paying attention. That he was building a house for his daughter, that she had been through some rough years after her mother left, that he wanted her to have a place that was hers, not rented, not borrowed, hers. Eliza felt the words hit her somewhere deep. She looked away, looked at the tree line. The dogwoods were still blooming, pink and white against the dark pines. "He said he was going to give it to you when you turned 21. Miriam went on. "Had the whole thing planned. Figured you'd need a couple years after high school to figure out what you wanted. By then, it would be done. He'd drive you up here and hand you the key." "He didn't make it." "No, he didn't." A small silence. The breeze moved through the pines. Somewhere a crow called. "Come on," Miriam said. "You need breakfast, real breakfast, not whatever was in those cans last night." Eliza blinked. "How did you know about the cans? Honey, Miriam said, I helped him stock that shelf. Miriam's house was a quarter-mile off the main gravel road. White clapboard farmhouse with a porch that wrapped around 3 sides, a rocking chair on the porch, wind chimes made out of old silverware, a garden with tomato cages set out, and a fence to keep the deer out, and rows already turned over for spring planting. The kitchen smelled like coffee and bacon and biscuits. Miriam put a plate in front of Eliza without asking what she wanted. Scrambled eggs, bacon, 2 biscuits split open with butter melting into the inside, a glass of orange juice, a cup of coffee. Eliza ate like she had not eaten in days, which was close to true. Miriam sat across from her with her own cup of coffee, didn't say anything for a long time, let her eat. When the plate was empty, Miriam took it and refilled it. Eliza opened her mouth to protest. Miriam said, "Don't." So she ate the second plate too. "How much do you know about the property?" Miriam finally asked. "Just what's on the deed. 2 acres, lot 14. Your daddy bought it at a county tax auction 7 years ago, $340. Previous owner had died, no heirs, taxes went unpaid. The county listed it as a hunting parcel with a condemned structure, wanted it off their books. The condemned structure, old hunting cabin from the 1950s, rotted through when Wendell bought it. He tore it down to the foundation and started over, kept the footprint, built everything else new. He never told me. He never told anyone except me and Harlan. Harlan because Harlan was selling him the materials. Miriam set her coffee down. She looked at Eliza for a long moment. Your daddy was a proud man, honey. Not the bad kind of proud. The kind where he didn't want credit for doing what he thought was his job. And his job was you. Providing for you was his job. He didn't need you to know about it until it was done. But it's not done. No, but it's closer than you might think. The hard part is done. What's left is finishing work. Eliza thought about the finished bedroom, the east window, the shelf at her height, the cedar plaque carved with her name. I want to finish it. She said it before she had even decided. It came out of her like something that had already been waiting. Miriam smiled. I know you do, honey. After breakfast, Miriam drove her back to the property in the green pickup. They walked through the house together, slowly, Miriam pointing out things Eliza had missed. The electrical was complete and up to code. Wendell had a friend named Henry inspect it 2 years ago. The roof was solid, 20-year shingles. The well pump was new, installed last summer. What's left is finishing work, Miriam said again, like she wanted Eliza to really hear it. Plumbing needs to be connected. Hot water heater, drywall in the second bedroom, flooring in the kitchen, paint, the porch. That's not a small list, but it's not framing a house either. The hard part is done. She looked at Eliza. Your daddy did the hard part. You just have to finish. The dog came back that afternoon. Eliza was outside, sitting on the porch boards, with her feet dangling over the edge. Miriam had gone home to bring her some clothes and a phone charger and a real flashlight. The dog walked out of the trees, stopped at the edge of the clearing, looked at her. Eliza opened a can of beans Miriam had left her, poured the beans onto a plastic plate, set the plate down 5 feet from the porch. She sat back. The dog watched. Then it came forward, slowly, eating fast the way an animal eats when it doesn't know where the next meal is coming from. When it finished, it sat down and looked at her. She looked back. What's your name? The dog tilted its head. You got a name? She knelt down, held out her hand. The dog stepped forward. She saw something on its collar, a small metal tag, dented and dirty. She turned it over. A single word stamped into the metal. Patches. She looked at the dog. Patches! The dog's tail thumped once against the dirt, just once, like it had been waiting a long time for someone to say its name out loud again. That night, Eliza sat on the cot in her finished bedroom, the lantern lit, the dog curled at her feet. She opened the notebook again, turned to a blank page in the back, found a pencil in the supply bin. She wrote her first entry. April 8th, moved in. Job at Harlan's starts Monday. Patches is here. Need a hot water heater, drywall, tile for the bathroom, paint for the second bedroom, porch lumber, steps. She looked at what she had written, then she added one more line. I'm gonna finish what you started, Daddy. She set the notebook on the shelf next to the beans, lay down on the cot, pulled the wool blanket up to her chin. Patches jumped up and curled against her feet, his weight warm and steady. Tomorrow she would start. Tonight she would sleep in the room her father had built, in the house he had never finished, on the land he had bought with $340 and 7 years of Saturdays. And for the first time in 3 weeks, for the first time since the funeral, for the first time since the phone call at the gas station that had hollowed her out from the inside, the silence didn't feel like grief. It felt like the beginning of something. Outside, the wind moved through the pines. Somewhere far off, a screech owl called. The east window held the last of the starlight, and in the room her father had built, his daughter slept. Monday morning, 6:50, Eliza stood outside Crawford Hardware in the pre-dawn cold, hands in her jacket pockets, breath fogging in the April air. Harlan unlocked the door at 6:55 sharp. He looked at her, saw the sawdust still caught in her hair from the night before. Coffee's in the back, he said. That was it. She went to the back. The work was simple, stocking shelves, organizing inventory, helping customers find what they needed. She liked it because it was physical, and her brain could rest while her hands worked. She unloaded pallets of 2x4s, sorted bins of screws by size, swept the concrete floor twice a day, memorized where every part lived on every shelf. Harlan didn't hover. He showed her the system once and let her figure out the rest. By Wednesday, she could find anything in the store with her eyes closed, finishing nails, compression fittings, the weird little drawer of specialty hinges nobody ever bought. By Friday, she had her own apron, hand-stitched name patch, Eliza. Harlan's wife, Delia, had made it. She had never met Delia. That was the kind of town Cedar Hollow was. Afternoons she built. The first project was the bathroom. Wendell had run the pipes, set the toilet flange, but nothing was connected. Eliza watched 3 YouTube videos on her phone, borrowed a pipe wrench from Harlan, spent 4 hours on her back under the subfloor, connecting PVC joints with primer and cement. She got it wrong twice. The first time a joint leaked. Slow, just a bead of water forming and dropping every 20 seconds. She cut it out, redid it. The second time she glued a fitting on backwards, had to saw through the pipe and start that whole section over. By the third try, the joints were clean and tight. When she flushed the toilet for the first time, and water actually went where it was supposed to go, she sat on the bathroom floor and laughed, out loud, for the first time in a month. Patches tilted his head from the doorway like she had lost her mind. Running water, she told him. That's not nothing. He thumped his tail. He agreed. The hot water heater came from Miriam, a 40-gallon gas unit her late husband Frank had installed back in 2009. 2 years later, they had switched to electric. The old one had been sitting in her garage ever since. Your daddy was going to trade me for it, Miriam said, leaning against her truck while Eliza wrestled the unit through the front door opening of the house. Fix my porch railing in exchange. He never got around to it. I'll fix your railing. I know you will, Miriam smiled. I'm not in a rush. Installing the water heater took 3 days. Gas line connection, venting through the roof, hot and cold lines hooked up. Harlan walked her through the gas fitting over the phone because she wasn't confident, wasn't going to take chances with gas. He made her check it with soapy water 3 times before he let her light the pilot, the first hot shower she took in that house, standing in the unfinished bathroom, exposed studs, a plastic curtain she had hung from a piece of wire, hot water on her shoulders after 3 weeks of cold well water and bird baths at Miriam's sink. She stood under that shower until it started to cool. Then she dried off with a towel Miriam had given her and put on clean clothes. Progress, small but real. Then there were biscuits. Miriam decided one Sunday morning that Eliza needed to know how to make biscuits. You can't live in the South and not make biscuits, she said. It's a crime. Eliza had never made anything more complicated than instant ramen. But she stood in Miriam's kitchen that morning, apron on, hands floured, while Miriam moved around her like a small silver-haired drill sergeant. Buttermilk. Cold. Cold matters. Yes, ma'am. Lard, not butter. Don't let anybody tell you butter is better. They're lying to you. Yes, ma'am. 3 cups white lily flour, not all-purpose. White lily. It is the only flour that exists for this purpose. Where do I get white lily? Harlan stocks it, next to the light bulbs. At the hardware store. This is a small town, honey. Eliza laughed. It came out before she knew it was coming. Miriam looked at her, smiled, didn't say anything, just kept measuring. The biscuits came out lopsided, brown, too dark on the bottom, but they were edible, and Miriam pronounced them an honest first effort, which Eliza understood meant you'll do better next time. She wrote the recipe in the back of her father's notebook, right under her list of things to fix. Buttermilk biscuits, white lily flour, lard, cold matters, a recipe from 1952 according to Miriam, passed down from her grandmother to her mother to her, and now to Eliza, a piece of someone else's family, folded into the same notebook as a piece of her own. The towns started showing up. She didn't know how small towns worked, didn't understand how information traveled through church pews and grocery store lines and front porch conversations, but by the end of April, people she didn't know started arriving at the property. A woman from the Baptist church brought curtains, handmade, white cotton, blue trim. For the east window, she said. Harlan described it. She didn't stay, just handed them over and drove away. A retired electrician named Henry stopped by to double-check the panel. He tightened 2 connections and replaced a breaker that was rated too low for the kitchen circuit. Took him 20 minutes. He stayed for an hour drinking coffee, telling Eliza stories about her father buying wire from him at a yard sale 6 years ago. He bought every scrap I had, Henry said. 12 gauge, 14 gauge, even some old 10 gauge I was about to throw out. Paid me $50 for the lot. I thought he was reselling it. Turns out he was wiring a house. Henry shook his head. Wendell never said a word. He didn't say a lot of words. No, he didn't. Henry sipped his coffee. The ones he did say, those were the ones that mattered. Marcus Hadley came the second week. A big man, mid-40s, hands scarred from pipework. He drove a battered Chevy with a magnetic sign on the door that said, Hadley Plumbing. He inspected every joint Eliza had connected. every fitting, every line. He found 2 spots where her work needed reinforcement, and 3 spots where her father's original work was flawless. Your daddy knew what he was doing, Marcus said, tightening a compression fitting under the kitchen sink. These joints are better than what I see in brand new construction. He was careful. Careful is one word for it. Marcus stood up, wiped his hands on a rag. Obsessive is another. He looked at her. This is love built into copper pipe. I've never seen anything like it. She didn't know what to say, so she offered to pay him. Don't insult me. What? Your daddy helped me frame my garage 8 years ago. 2 days of work, wouldn't take a dime. Said neighbors help neighbors, so I'm helping. Marcus, you want to pay me back? Help Delia Crawford with her garden in October. Harlan's wife. She does a big fall harvest, and she's getting old. Could use the hands. Done. Done. He nodded, picked up his toolbox, walked out. That was it. Every person who came had a story about Wendell, a transaction, a favor, a small conversation in a parking lot 8 years ago, pieces of her father she had never known, reflected back through the people he had quietly moved among for 7 years. And the house grew, not just in completion, in something else, in the accumulation of all these hands, all these small offerings. It was becoming more than lumber and drywall and pipe. It was becoming a place that had been touched by everyone Wendell had touched. She wrote in the notebook every night, page 24, 25, 26, her handwriting next to his, her lists of what she had done that day, what needed doing tomorrow, what she had learned. She was on page 27 when she found something she had missed, a folded paper tucked behind page 23, the last page her father had written on. She had flipped past it a dozen times without noticing, but that night she did notice, because the binding was bulging slightly, and when she lifted the back cover of the notebook, the paper fell out into her lap. She unfolded it. A medical chart, dated 14 months before her father died. Patient Bellwether Wendell J., age 51, cardiology department, Wake County Medical Center. She scanned down the page. Her stomach dropped. Significant coronary artery blockage. LAD 80%, RCA 60%. Recommend immediate angioplasty and possible bypass surgery. Patient declines surgical intervention. Prescribed nitroglycerin, atorvastatin, metoprolol. Patient verbally acknowledged risks, including myocardial infarction and sudden cardiac death. Patient signed AMA form. Follow-up scheduled. She read it twice. Then she saw the note in the margin, her father's block letters. Surgery means 6 months recovery. 6 months I don't have. The house isn't done. The pills will buy me time. I need time. Just need time to finish. She put the paper down on the cot, stared at it until the words blurred. He had known. For 14 months he had known he was dying, and he had said nothing. Not to her, not to a doctor, not to anyone. He had refused the surgery because the surgery would have cost him the house. He had traded years of his life for that house, for her. He had traded years of his life for her. She sat very still for a long time. The lantern flickered. Patches lifted his head, watched her. He knew something had shifted. Dogs always know. She picked up the paper, folded it, put it back behind page 23. She lay down on the cot, pulled the wool blanket up to her chin, and stared at the ceiling, stared at the rafters her father had set in place, each one straight, each one level, each one nailed with hands that had been beating out of rhythm for 14 months. She didn't sleep, not for a long time. The truck came on a Thursday in late May. Eliza was on a ladder, painting the trim around the front window. She heard the diesel engine. She knew the sound. She had grown up listening to that engine pull into the apartment parking lot. Vernon's truck, or rather, her father's truck, which was Vernon's now. He parked at the edge of the clearing. He got out, and he wasn't alone. A second man got out of the passenger side. Suit, no tie, briefcase. The kind of man who arrived in places where he wasn't wanted, carrying a thin briefcase like a weapon. Eliza came down off the ladder, slowly, set the paintbrush across the can, wiped her hands on her jeans. Patches stood up from his spot on the porch. His hackles were up. He didn't growl. He didn't need to. "Eliza," Vernon said. "Vernon, this is Mr. Pickett, my attorney." The attorney nodded. She didn't nod back. "What do you want?" "There's a question," Pickett said, "about the title to this property. My client has reason to believe." "There's no question. My client is the surviving brother of the decedent. Under North Carolina intestate succession law, there's no intestate succession, there's a will." Pickett paused. His eyes narrowed. He glanced at Vernon. Vernon's jaw was tight. "What will?" Pickett said. "The notarized will my father filed with the county 3 months before he died. My client was not informed of any such instrument." "Your client wasn't supposed to be." Pickett opened his briefcase, pulled out a folder. "My client has produced documentation indicating substantial financial obligations owed by Mr. Bellwether. Loan agreements signed by Mr. Bellwether himself." He held out a piece of paper. Eliza didn't take it. She looked at Vernon. Vernon looked at the ground. "You forged those," she said. "That's slander," Pickett said. "Sue me." A long silence. Patches stepped forward. Just one step. Vernon stepped back. Just one step. She heard another engine then another, coming up the gravel road, slow, deliberate. 3 vehicles. Harlan's truck first, then Henry's, then Marcus's. They parked at the edge of the clearing, behind Vernon's truck, blocking it in, not on purpose, just by accident of geometry. Harlan got out first, walked up the dirt path. He was carrying a folder, a different kind of folder than Pickett's, a thinner one, older, worn at the edges. He stopped beside Eliza. He didn't say anything. He just opened the folder. He held the paper out toward Pickett. Pickett took it. Read it. His expression didn't change. But something in his shoulders did. "That's a will." "Witnessed by you and your wife." "That's right. Notarized. Filed with the county clerk April 4th of last year." A long silence. Vernon was watching the trees. Pickett folded the paper, handed it back to Harlan. "My client and I will need to consult." "You do that. We'll be in touch." "You do that too." Harlan didn't smile. He didn't have to. Pickett turned to go back to the truck. Vernon didn't move. He stood there, looking at the house, then at Eliza, then at Harlan, then at Henry and Marcus standing behind Harlan with their arms crossed. Henry holding a coffee thermos, Marcus holding a pipe wrench he had brought along casually, like he just happened to have it. Vernon's eyes moved across them. These men who had helped his brother build a house in secret, these men who had shown up on a Thursday afternoon without anyone calling them, without anyone asking, because they had heard, because in a small town, word travels, because Vernon's truck pulling up to the Bellwether property meant something to people in Cedar Hollow that it would never have meant in Garner. His shoulders sagged, just a little. He looked at Eliza. He opened his mouth, closed it. He walked to the truck, got in, drove away. Nobody said anything for a long time after the engine sound faded. Then Harlan said, "Anyone want coffee?" Henry held up his thermos. "Brought my own." Marcus said, "I never say no to coffee." They walked up to the porch, sat on the steps that Eliza had not yet built, just on the edge of the porch. 3 men, drinking coffee in the afternoon sun, while Eliza stood in the grass and watched. She didn't cry, but her hands were shaking, patches pressed against her leg. She put her hand on his head. She held on. Vernon didn't come back that week, or the next, or the one after that. Eliza didn't know what he was doing, or where he was, or whether Pickett was still drawing up papers, but she kept working, because the work was the answer. The work was always the answer. She drywalled the second bedroom. Harlan showed her how to tape and mud the joints, how to sand them smooth, how to avoid leaving ridges that would show through paint. Her first wall looked rough. Her 5th wall looked professional. By the time she finished the second bedroom, she was good at it. Not great, just good. But good was enough. It was a Tuesday in early June when she found them. She had pulled the notebook out of the shelf to write the day's entry. She set it down on the cot, and as it landed, the back cover bent a little, and she heard something, a small sound, like paper sliding against paper. She picked the notebook back up. She turned it over. The back cover. It wasn't just cardboard. It was thicker than it should have been. She ran her thumb along the seam. There, a small slit, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. A pocket. She slid her finger inside, pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. No address on the front, just one word in handwriting she didn't recognize. A woman's handwriting. Small, round, careful. Wendell. She turned the envelope over. The seal was unbroken, or it had been, once, and then it had been resealed. With a different glue, she could see the slight discoloration along the edge. Her father had opened this letter, read it, sealed it again, and kept it. For how long? She slid her thumb under the flap, carefully. The paper inside was thin, lined, torn from a legal pad. The handwriting was careful and small, dated 11 years ago. Wendell, I know you won't write back. I know you're angry, and you have every right, but I need you to know why I left, because Eliza deserves the truth, even if she never hears it from me. She stopped, her chest squeezed. She kept reading. I was diagnosed in February, early onset, MS. The neurologist said I had maybe 10 good years, and then my body would start shutting down piece by piece. I was 27 years old, and I had a 3-year-old daughter who needed a mother who could carry her, chase her, hold her steady when she was scared. I couldn't be that mother, not for long, and I couldn't let her watch me disappear. Eliza's hand was shaking. I know what you'll say. You'll say she needed me anyway. You'll say sick is better than gone. Maybe you're right, but I saw my own mother waste away from the same disease, and I promised myself I would never put a child through that. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to understand that I left because I loved her, not because I didn't. Leaving was the only thing I could give her that would cost me everything and give her a chance at normal. Please don't tell her I'm sick. Let her be angry at me for leaving. Anger is easier to carry than pity. Adeline, Adeline, her mother's name, a name Eliza had not heard spoken aloud in 16 years, a name she had stopped saying, a name she had let herself forget on purpose, because saying it hurt, and because forgetting was easier. She read the letter again, and again. The words blurred. She blinked until they cleared. Her mother had MS. Her mother had been diagnosed at 27. Her mother had left because she was dying, and she didn't want her daughter to watch her die. 16 years of anger, 16 years of believing her mother had walked out because she didn't want to be a mother anymore. 16 years of filling in the blank with the worst possible reason, because nobody had ever given her the real one. There was a second envelope in the pocket, same handwriting, newer paper. She unfolded it with hands that didn't feel like her own. Dated 2 years ago. Wendell, it's been 9 years since my last letter. I don't know if you read that one either, but I'm writing because I want you to know where I am, in case something happens to me and Eliza ever wants to find out. I'm at the Greenfield Care Center in Bristol, Virginia, room 214. My legs went last year. My right arm is unreliable now. I can still write if I go slowly. I heard through your Aunt June that Eliza is finishing high school next year. I cried for 2 hours. I am so proud of her, and so proud of you for raising her right. I also heard you're building a house. June wouldn't say where or what for, but she said you've been at it for years. If it's for Eliza, then you're a better parent than I ever was. She deserves a home. She deserves everything. I don't expect to hear from you, but if Eliza ever asks about me, you can tell her. Or don't. That's your choice. I gave up the right to decide when I walked out that door. I love her. I have loved her every single day since I left. Adeline. Eliza put both letters on the cot, side by side. 2 letters. Spanning years, a mother writing into silence, asking for nothing, expecting nothing, getting nothing back. Or had Wendell written back? Had he gone to see her? Eliza turned the notebook over in her hands. She had read every page. She had thought she had read every page, but she hadn't checked the pocket. She slid her hand in again, felt deeper. There was something else, a small bundle of paper, held together with a rubber band. She pulled it out. She removed the rubber band. The papers were thin, receipt thin, the kind printed on cheap paper that fades within a year. She held the first one up to the lantern. Greyhound lines, Garner, North Carolina to Bristol, Virginia, one way, May 14th, 2020, $48.50. She picked up the next one. Greyhound lines, Garner, North Carolina to Bristol, Virginia, one way, October 22nd, 2020, $48.50. She kept going. March 8th, 2021, $48.50. August 17th, 2021, $50. December 19th, 2021, $52. She counted them. 14 tickets. 14 in 7 years. Roughly 2 per year. Spring and fall. Like clockwork. Her father had been visiting her mother in secret for 7 years while he was building the house, while he was working full-time, while he was telling Eliza he had to pick up side work on Saturdays. He had been splitting his secret into pieces, the house in one piece, the visits in another. Both kept hidden from her. Both kept hidden because Adeline had asked, because her mother had asked him not to tell, and he had kept that promise. But he had not abandoned her. He had not abandoned anyone. Eliza sat with the tickets in her lap for a long time. The lantern hissed. Patches breathed in slow, even pulls beside the cot. She had thought she understood her father, the quiet man, the exhausted man, the man who came home with sawdust in his hair on Saturday nights and fell asleep on the couch in front of the news. She had thought he was tired because he worked too hard. She had thought he was quiet because he didn't know how to talk. She had been wrong. He was tired because he was carrying everything. He was quiet because he was holding too many promises at once, and he had been holding them alone for 16 years. She didn't sleep that night. She lay on the cot with the letters on her chest, and she thought about her mother. She thought about her father standing on the steps of a care facility in Bristol, Virginia. She thought about him buying a Greyhound ticket with a hand that beat out of rhythm. She thought about him riding a bus 4 hours each way, twice a year, for 7 years. She thought about him coming home and not saying a word because he had promised, and he kept his promises. In the morning she went outside. The sun was just coming up. The dew was on the grass. She sat on the porch boards, the bare boards, the ones she had not yet covered. She opened the notebook again because she had not finished looking through it, because she had a feeling there was more. She went to the front cover. She had only ever opened the notebook to the inside, to page 1, where her father's first entry was. She had never looked at the inside of the front cover. She did now. Tucked into the front cover, held in place with a paper clip, a piece of folded paper. She removed the paper clip. She unfolded the paper. It was a list. 23 names in her father's block lettering. At the top of the page, 3 words: Saturday morning, prayers. She scanned the list. She didn't expect what she found. The first name on the list, the very first name, Vernon Bellwether, my brother. She stared at it. She read the second name, Eliza, my girl. She read the third, Adeline, wherever she is. She read the fourth, Miriam, the fifth, Harlan and Delia. The list went on. Henry, Marcus, the boy at the gas station who never smiles, the waitress at Sue's who's pregnant alone, the neighbor across the hall who lost his wife last spring. Every Saturday, Lord, every Saturday. She read the list 3 times, 23 names, and the first name was the man who had stripped her father's apartment 3 weeks after his death. Vernon. Her father had prayed for Vernon every Saturday for 7 years. The man who had stolen from him, the man who had treated him like a wallet for 2 decades. Her father had put his brother's name at the top of his prayer list, above his daughter, above the wife who had left him, above his own future. He had prayed for the man who had taken from him. He had prayed for him first. Eliza set the list down on the porch boards. She looked out at the clearing. The grass was silver with dew. The dogwoods had finished blooming. The blossoms had given way to small green leaves. A wren landed on the railing she had not yet built. She thought about her father. She thought about the man on his knees at 5 in the morning on a Saturday, praying for his brother by name for 7 years, while his brother took and took and took. He had kept loving him in secret, the way he had loved everyone in his life, in secret, by doing, by building, by praying, by riding a Greyhound bus 4 hours each way to sit beside a woman who had left him, by saving $340 to buy a piece of land at a tax auction, by cutting his own future short, by refusing surgery so he could finish a house for his daughter. Every act of love her father had ever done was an act of love nobody had seen until now. Now they were all coming out, one by one, like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered for years and were finally falling into place. She sat on the porch until the sun cleared the treetops. Then she got up. She went inside. She got a sheet of paper and a pen out of her backpack. She sat down at the small table she had built in the kitchen. The table she had made from scrap lumber, sanded and sealed, big enough for 2 people and a plate of biscuits. She started to write, "Dear Adeline." She paused, crossed it out. "Dear Mama." She paused again. The word Mama on the page in her own handwriting. It looked strange. She had not written it in 16 years. She had not said it in 16 years. She kept writing, "My name is Eliza. I'm your daughter. I'm 19 years old. I'm writing to you from a house my father built in secret for 7 years on 2 acres of land he bought at a tax auction for $340. I found your letters, both of them. I read them 4 times, then I read them again, and then I cried for 2 days. Not because I'm sad, because I'm sorry. I'm sorry for 16 years of being angry at the wrong thing, for 16 years of telling myself a story about you that wasn't true, because nobody told me the real one, and I should have asked. I should have asked. She paused. She wiped her face. She kept writing. Dad died in March. Heart attack. I think he knew it was coming. I found a medical chart. He had known for over a year. He never told anyone. He just kept building. He never told me about you either, not while he was alive. He kept your secret all the way to the end, but he also kept your letters. He put them in his notebook, where he knew I would find them eventually. I think he knew you were waiting, and I think he wanted me to find you, just not from him. I also found a stack of Greyhound tickets, 14 of them, to Bristol, Virginia. Over the last 7 years, he visited you. He never told me. He never told anyone. I want you to know that I know now. I know about the MS. I know why you left. I'm not angry anymore. I don't know what I am, but it isn't angry. She paused again. She thought about how to end it. She wrote, I want to come see you when I'm ready. I'm not ready yet, but I want to be. Will you write back, Eliza Bellwether, Lot 14, Miller Creek Road, Cedar Hollow, North Carolina. She folded the letter. She put it in an envelope she had bought at the post office. She wrote the address from her mother's letter. Adeline Bellwether, Greenfield Care Center, room 214, Bristol, Virginia. She didn't know if her mother was still there. She didn't know if her mother was still alive, but she wrote the address. She sealed the envelope, and she put it on the table by the front door. Miriam came at noon that day. She brought a basket. Inside the basket, 2 skeins of yarn, robin's egg blue, the color of the east window light at 6 in the morning. What's that wool? Wool from a sheep my friend Doris raises down in Sanford. What's it for? For you. Miriam, I'm going to teach you to knit. I don't know how. That is why I'm going to teach you. She set the basket down on the kitchen table. She pulled out 2 long wooden knitting needles. Why? Because you wrote a letter, and you're going to need to send something with it. Eliza looked at her. How did you know I wrote a letter? Because I'd write a letter if I were you. They sat on Miriam's porch that afternoon. 2 chairs, rockers. Miriam taught her to cast on. Miriam taught her to knit one, purl one. Miriam taught her how to undo her mistakes and how to forgive herself for making them in the first place. The blanket was small, big enough for a lap, not big enough for a body, but big enough to say, I'm thinking of you without having to say it. It took her 3 weeks. She made mistakes. She fixed them. She kept going. The day she finished, she folded the blanket. She wrapped it in tissue paper Miriam gave her. She put it in a box with the letter. She drove with Miriam to the post office. She set the box on the counter. The woman behind the counter waited, quoted her a price. She paid in cash, 5 wrinkled dollar bills from her tip jar at Harlan's. She watched the box go into the mail bin. The metal door clanged shut, and that was that. A box into the unknown, the same way Adeline had once sent her letters. That night Eliza sat on the porch, the unfinished porch, the bare boards, the 2 Adirondack chairs she had bought at a yard sale and dragged home one at a time. Patches lay beside her. The crickets were loud. The fireflies were out. The sky over the pines was the color of old copper. She thought about her father praying for his brother. She thought about her mother in a care facility in Bristol. She thought about her uncle riding away in a truck. She thought about everything she did not yet know and everything she had already learned. And for the first time in 3 months, for the first time since the funeral, for the first time since the deed in the Bible, she felt something she had not expected to feel: forgiveness. Not the easy kind, the hard kind, the kind that comes after, the kind that says, I understand now. I don't approve, but I understand. She thought about all the people in her life, the ones she had been angry at. She didn't know if she could forgive them all. She didn't know if she even wanted to, but she understood something now that she had not understood before. You could be angry at someone and still leave the door open. Her father had taught her that, without ever saying a word, by praying for his brother every Saturday for 7 years, while his brother took everything from him. She got up. She went inside. She picked up the notebook. She opened it to a fresh page. She wrote, June 12th, sent the letter, sent the blanket. I don't know what comes next. I'm not in a hurry to find out. Marcus said the kitchen tile he salvaged for me will arrive next week. The porch needs steps. The front door needs hanging. I miss you, Daddy. But I'm not alone, not anymore. She closed the notebook. She set it on the shelf. She blew out the lantern. The east window held the first stars of evening, and in the room her father had built, his daughter slept. July came, then August. The mailbox stayed empty. Eliza checked it every day after work, walking the gravel road from where the county truck dropped off mail at the main road all the way to her dirt path, a 1/4 mile, Patches walking beside her. Every day, empty, every day, she kept walking, because waiting was a kind of work too. She fixed Miriam's railing in July, replaced 4 rotted posts, re-leveled the top rail, added braces underneath. Miriam sat in her chair and supervised, which meant she pointed out every imperfection and told stories about her late husband Frank building the original railing back in 1983. He used pine. I told him pine would rot. He said it would be fine. 40 years later, here we are. We're using cedar. Smart girl. When they finished, Miriam made them dinner: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans from her garden. Patches lay under the table, waiting for scraps. They ate. The light through the kitchen window went gold, and in the middle of dinner, Miriam said, Eliza. Yes, ma'am. You're doing fine. Am I? You're doing better than fine. You're doing what most people 3 times your age can't do. Eliza didn't know what to say, so she said, Thank you. Miriam nodded. That's enough for tonight. Vernon came back on the first Saturday in August. She wasn't ready. Nobody is ever ready. But she was standing on the porch when his truck pulled up the dirt path, and she watched him park, and she watched him get out. He looked terrible, thinner, maybe 20 pounds lost. His clothes hung on him. His face was gray. He hadn't shaved. He hadn't slept. She could see it in his shoulders. He came up to the bottom of the porch, where the steps still weren't built. He stopped, looked up at her. I'm not here about the property. I know. Lorraine left me. I figured. A long pause. He looked at the dirt. 3 weeks ago, said I was mean, said I was getting meaner, said she wasn't going to wait around for it to get worse. She's not wrong. He looked up at her then. His eyes were her father's eyes. That same thing, that same color. No, he said, she's not. The wind moved through the pines. Patches sat on the porch beside her, watching, not growling, just watching. He had been astray. He understood broken people. "Eliza," Vernon said. "What?" "I didn't come for forgiveness." "Good, because I don't have any to give you right now." He nodded, like he had expected that. "I came because I don't know where else to go." She watched him. He was telling the truth. She could see that. A man with nowhere to go. A man who had taken everything and was now empty-handed. A man who looked like her father, but wasn't. A man who had been prayed for every Saturday for 7 years by the brother he had treated like a wallet. She thought about her father's prayer list. The first name, Vernon Bellwether, my brother. She closed her eyes. She opened them. She picked up the hammer that had been sitting on the porch railing. She held it out to him. "I need to build 3 porch steps." He looked at the hammer, then at her. "You serious? You know how to use a saw?" A long pause. He took the hammer. "Yeah," he said, "I know how to use a saw." They worked for 3 days. They didn't talk much. Vernon measured, cut stringers from cedar that Marcus had dropped off 2 weeks earlier. Eliza cut treads to length. They worked the way Wendell and Vernon used to work 30 years ago, before everything went sideways between them. Vernon was good with a saw. His hands remembered, even if the rest of him had forgotten. His face didn't change much. But on the second day, when the cedar was clamped in place and he was sinking screws through the stringer, he paused, set the drill down, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, pretended it was sawdust. She pretended she didn't see. They kept working. On the 3rd day, the steps were done. 3 of them, solid, level, wide enough for 2 people to walk up side by side. Cedar, sanded smooth, sealed with 2 coats. Vernon sat on the bottom step, drank water from a bottle Eliza handed him. He looked at the house. "He built all this himself," he said. "Most of it. 7 years. 7 years." He shook his head. "I didn't know he had it in him. I mean, I knew he was good with his hands. But this is something else." "It's love," Eliza said. She said it without thinking, and as soon as the word was out, she knew it was true. The house wasn't a building project. It was a 7-year-long act of devotion. Vernon looked at the steps he had just built. 3 steps. Maybe an hour's work for a skilled carpenter. Compared to what Wendell had done, it was nothing, but he had built them. He had come back and built something. Instead of taking something, "I should go," he said, standing. "You can come back," Eliza said, "if you want." He nodded, didn't say anything else, walked to the truck, drove away. The next morning, she was outside drinking coffee on her new steps. Patches at her feet, the sun coming over the trees. She saw something she had not paid attention to before. The tool shed, out behind the house, past the wheelbarrow, past the stack of lumber. A small wooden shed, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. Wendell had built it. She knew because she had watched it grow in the satellite photos she had pulled up online of the property. It was padlocked. She had assumed it was tools, maybe leftover building materials. She had not gotten around to opening it. She had been busy. There was always something more important. She set her coffee down. She walked over to it. The padlock was a Master 5, combination dial. She didn't know the combination. She stood there until she remembered something. She went inside, got her father's wallet out of her backpack. The wallet Harlan had given her 3 weeks after she arrived, with everything still inside. He had picked it up off the apartment floor after Vernon left. He had been holding it. She opened the wallet. She pulled out the small slip of paper folded behind her father's driver's license. She had looked at it before, thought it was nothing. A combination, 301432. She walked back out to the shed. She turned the dial, right to 30, left past 0 to 14, right back to 32. The lock clicked open. She pulled the door open. The hinges creaked. The smell came out first. Cedar, sawdust, pine, something else, something faintly sweet, like old paint. The shed was dim, only one small window, up high, letting in a square of morning light. She stepped inside, her eyes adjusted. She saw a workbench against one wall, hand tools hanging on a pegboard sorted by size, chisels, files, a small jeweler's hammer she had never seen before. She turned to the right, and she stopped on a wide shelf built into the wall, sitting at exactly chest height, a house, a small house, maybe 2 feet tall, 3 feet wide, the front open like a doll's house, the roof shingled with tiny pieces of cedar, the siding painted pale blue, the same pale blue as the real house outside, a miniature of the house she was standing on the property of. She approached it slowly. She knelt. She brought her face close. She could see the porch, the framed-out porch with its raw 2x6s, exactly like the real one before Vernon had built the steps. She could see the front door, a piece of plywood even painted to look weathered. She could see the windows, each one with real glass set into the tiny frames. The east window of the bedroom, slightly bigger than the others. She opened the front of the dollhouse. The inside was finished too. A miniature kitchen, hand-built cabinets in pine, a tiny stove, a tiny refrigerator, a window above the sink looking out at a painted backdrop of trees, a miniature bathroom with tiny blue tile on the floor, a second bedroom, walls painted soft white, furniture inside, and her bedroom, the east-facing bedroom. She leaned closer. She could see the shelf, mounted at the right height, a tiny lantern on it, a tiny cot against one wall, a folded scrap of wool, maybe a 1/4 inch square, the blanket above the door of the tiny bedroom, a tiny cedar plaque. She couldn't read it from this distance, but she knew what it said. She reached in. She lifted the tiny cot. There was something underneath, a piece of fabric. She pulled it out. It was a small pillow, maybe the size of a postage stamp, 2 inches square, made of cotton, stuffed with cotton batting, hand-stitched. She held it up to the light from the window. On the front of the pillow, embroidered in tiny, careful stitches, the kind of stitches that take hours to make, done by someone who could barely see by the end of the day, a single word, Eliza. She turned it over. On the back, in the same tiny embroidery, a date from 16 years ago, the year her mother had left. She sat back on her heels. She held the pillow in her palm. The pillow was older than the dollhouse, older than the real house, older than the deed. Her mother had made this 16 years ago, before she had left. She had stitched her daughter's name on a tiny pillow, maybe for the doll Eliza had played with as a toddler, maybe just because she had known she was leaving and she wanted to leave something behind. And her father had kept it for 16 years. He had carried this pillow through 3 apartments and a divorce and the death of his marriage and the slow disappearance of his wife and the diagnosis of his own heart condition and the construction of a house. And he had put it in a dollhouse he had built for their daughter, inside the miniature version of the bedroom he was making for her, so that one day she would find it, so that one day she would know. A sound behind her. She didn't turn around at first. She heard the footsteps, slow, hesitant. Eliza, Vernon's voice. She had not heard him drive up. She didn't move. I was on my way back to drop off the chisel I borrowed. Door was open. I thought maybe you were. He stopped. He saw what she was looking at. She heard his breath catch. He stepped inside the shed. He came over and stood next to her. He looked at the dollhouse. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he reached out a finger, very slowly, like he was afraid the dollhouse might disappear if he touched it. He touched the tiny porch. He pulled his hand back. He sank to his knees beside her. His knees hit the concrete hard. He didn't notice. "Vernon," he didn't answer. "Vernon, look." She turned the pillow over. She held it out to him. She showed him the embroidery. He looked at it. His face changed. Not the way it had changed at the funeral. Not the way it had changed when Pickett had handed back the will. This was different. This was a face she had never seen on her uncle, a face she didn't know he could make. That's Adeline stitching. Yes, he kept this. Yes, for 16 years. Yes. His whole body started to shake. He covered his face with his hands. He started to cry. He cried the way men cry when they have not cried in 40 years, the way they cry when something inside them finally breaks, the kind of crying that doesn't have any sound at first, just shoulders moving, hands pressed against the face. Then the sound comes, and the sound comes from somewhere deep, somewhere that has been locked up for so long that the door has rusted shut. Eliza did not move. She didn't know what to do. She thought about her father, praying for him, Saturday after Saturday after Saturday. For 7 years, she put her hand on her uncle's shoulder, just left it there. That was all she could do. He cried for a long time. She held the pillow, and outside the shed, the sun rose higher, and the cedar smell filled the small space, and the dust hung in the square of light, and neither of them spoke. When Vernon could speak again, his voice was hoarse. He never stopped loving her. No, he never stopped loving me either, did he? She thought about the prayer list. She thought about whether to tell him. She decided she would, but not yet, not today. Today was too much already. She said, "No, Vernon, he didn't." He nodded, wiped his face. "I have to go." "Okay, I'll come back." "Okay." He stood up. He walked out of the shed. She heard the truck door open. She heard the engine start. She heard the tires on the gravel. She heard him drive away. She stayed kneeling on the concrete floor of the shed. She held the pillow against her chest. She did not cry. She had cried enough. Now she just felt full, full of something she did not have a name for. The letter from Adeline came on a Tuesday in September. Eliza found it in the mailbox when she walked home from Harlan's. Patches walking beside her the way he always did now. A white envelope, shaky handwriting on the front, her name, her address, written by a hand that had trouble with straight lines. But the lines were there. The letters were legible. She sat down on the porch steps, the cedar steps Vernon had built. Patches sat beside her. She opened the envelope. "Dear Eliza, I read your letter 4 times. The nurses had to bring me tissues twice. I don't know if you know this, but I cry now, more than I used to. The disease does that. Or maybe it's just being 43 and finally having my daughter's handwriting in my hands. I am still here. I have been moved. I am not at Greenfield anymore. There is a small Christian charity called Bethel House. They have a cottage program. I have my own small place, a room, a kitchenette, a garden out back that someone tends for me. The lady's name is Joan, and she brings me strawberries. I can use a wheelchair. My right hand still works most days. My left is not so good. I am writing this with my right. I would very much like it if you came to see me. Whenever you are ready. No rush. I waited 16 years. I can wait a little longer. The blanket is on my lap right now. It is the color of the sky 30 minutes before sunrise. Your father would have loved it. I love you. I have loved you every day. Mom, Eliza folded the letter. She put it back in the envelope. She sat on the steps for a long time. The leaves on the dogwoods were turning, the first hints of red and orange at the edges. The September light was different, lower, more golden, the shadows longer. She thought about going. She thought about not going. She thought about how her mother had used the word mom at the bottom of the letter. She thought about her father's prayer lists. She got up. She went inside. She called Miriam. "Can you watch Patches for 3 days?" "Of course I can." "I have a trip to make." "I figured." "Bristol, bring her something. Don't go empty-handed." "What should I bring?" "Bring the notebook." "The notebook. She'll want to see his handwriting. Trust me." The Greyhound left at 6 in the morning. Eliza watched Cedar Hollow disappear behind her through a smeared window. The same kind of bus seat her father had sat in, maybe even the same seat. The driver was the same driver who had driven the route for years. She rode for 4 hours. She didn't read. She didn't sleep. She just watched the country go by. The Carolina hills, the Virginia state line, the mountains rising in the distance, the way the light changed as the bus moved north. She thought about her father riding this bus 14 times. She thought about him looking out the same window, at the same view, holding the same kind of small bag of belongings on his lap, carrying something for Adeline, maybe a book, maybe a flower, maybe nothing at all, maybe just himself. She thought about how he had done this in secret. Now she was doing it in the open. The world had changed, or maybe just her world had. Bristol was smaller than she had expected. A river ran through it. Some of it was in Virginia, some of it was in Tennessee. The bus dropped her at a station near a row of old brick buildings. She got out a piece of paper. The address, Bethel House, Cottage 4, 18 Cherry Street. She walked. It was a 15-minute walk, past a coffee shop, past a small park with a fountain, past a Baptist church with stained glass, up a quiet street with old maple trees. She found Bethel House, a converted farmhouse, white paint, big front porch, a sign by the road. Bethel House, a Christian hospitality ministry. All are welcome. Behind the main house, a path of stepping stones leading to 4 small cottages. Cottage 4, the last one. A wooden ramp instead of steps. A window box with late summer flowers. A wreath on the door made of dried wheat and dried roses. Eliza stopped on the path. She held the notebook against her chest. She did not feel 19 years old. She felt 3 years old. She walked the last 20 feet anyway. She raised her hand. She knocked. A voice from inside. "Come in. It's unlocked." Eliza pushed the door open. The cottage was small. 1 room, a bed against one wall, a small kitchen against another, a round table by a window with 2 chairs, a wheelchair beside the table. Sitting in the wheelchair, a woman, silver hair pulled back in a low bun, pale skin, thin shoulders, a blue cardigan wrapped around her despite the warmth of the day, hands folded in her lap, the left hand resting limp, the right hand still and waiting. Her eyes were Eliza's eyes. That was the part that stopped her. She had known, somewhere inside. Of course she had known. She had her mother's eyes. She had seen them every morning in the mirror for 19 years. But to see them on someone else's face, she had not prepared herself for that. Adeline did not speak. She just looked. Eliza closed the door behind her, stood with the notebook against her chest. "Hi, hi." Adeline's voice was soft, higher than Eliza had imagined it. The voice of a woman who had not used her voice much, of a woman who had been listening for a long time. "Mama?" The word came out before Eliza decided to say it. Adeline closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. I'm sorry it took me so long. It's all right. It's all right, honey. It's not all right. It's all right now. A long pause. Eliza took a step forward. Adeline lifted her right hand, slowly, reaching. Eliza closed the rest of the distance. She knelt by the wheelchair. She put her hand in her mother's hand. Her mother's hand was thin and warm and steady. Adeline closed her fingers around Eliza's, and she held on. They sat like that for a long time, neither one of them speaking. The clock on the wall ticked. A bird called outside. Somewhere somebody was running a lawnmower. Eventually, Adeline said, "You look like him. People keep telling me that. You also look like me. I know. Do you? I have your eyes." Adeline closed them again. When she opened them, she tilted her head toward the kitchenette. "There's tea in the cabinet. Could you put the kettle on?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am." "Yes, Mama." Eliza put the kettle on. She found the tea bags, Lipton, the same kind her father had drunk. She brought 2 cups to the table. She sat in the chair across from her mother. She set the notebook between them. "What is that?" "It's Dad's. He kept it. From the house. From the 7 years." Adeline reached out a hand. She touched the cover. Just touched it. She didn't open it. "He had handwriting like a builder," she said. "Yes." Block letters, all capitals, every I a straight line, no dot. "Yes." She smiled. It was a small smile, a tired smile, the kind of smile that has waited a long time. I used to tease him about it. He still wrote that way, right up to the end. Of course he did. She pulled her hand back. She looked at Eliza. "Read me something." "From the notebook. Anything you want." Eliza opened it. She turned to page 15, a page her mother had not yet heard. She read, "Bathroom tile. Need to find blue. She likes blue. Said it once when she was 8 looking at a swimming pool. The kind of blue that makes you feel calm. I'll find that blue, even if it takes a year. She doesn't know I remember her saying it. She doesn't know I remember everything." Adeline was crying, quietly, tears running down her face. She didn't wipe them. Her right hand was in her lap. Her left hand wouldn't have done a good job. Eliza reached across the table and wiped them for her, with her thumb, both cheeks. Adeline closed her eyes. "Thank you, baby." That's when Eliza saw it. Behind her mother's shoulder, on the shelf above the bed, a photograph in a small wooden frame, simple, pine. She got up, walked to the shelf, picked up the photograph. She looked at it. Her father, Wendell, standing in the clearing in front of the half-built house, maybe 2 years ago. The siding only on one wall, the porch framed but not built. He was smiling. He was holding a puppy, a brown and white puppy, maybe 8 weeks old. The puppy was looking up at him with bright eyes. One ear flopped forward. The other ear was already torn. Eliza turned around slowly. She held the photograph up. "Mama." "Yes, this is Patches." Adelie's eyes were soft. She nodded. "I know. You sent him." "I did." "How?" "My friend Joan, the one with the strawberries. She has a sister who lives in Garner. The sister works at the animal shelter there. We had a litter of strays come in. Joan called me. I asked her if she could pick one out for Wendell. A good one, a smart one. She said she would. She named him Patches because he had a patch over his left eye that looked like he'd been in a fight. Dad never told me. Wendell didn't tell anyone anything, baby. You know that. But you sent him a dog. I sent him company, out there, in the woods, building a house alone, every Saturday for 7 years. He needed someone. even if it was a dog. Eliza sat back down at the table. She put the photograph in front of her. She looked at her father's smile. She had not seen her father smile in years. She had forgotten how he looked when he was happy. He named him Patches because of you. He named him Patches because Joan named him Patches. He never changed it. No, he didn't. Eliza touched her father's face in the photograph. I never knew. I know, baby. He never told me. He never told anyone. A pause. Adeline looked at her daughter. He kept all of us, every single one of us. He kept all of us together, with nothing but pieces of string and prayer. Eliza stayed for 3 days. She slept on a small fold-out cot Joan brought over from the main house. Adeline talked when she could. She tired easily. Her right hand cramped after 20 minutes of holding things. They went through the notebook together. Adeline read every entry. She laughed at some of them. She cried at others. She held Eliza's hand through most of them. She told stories about Wendell that Eliza had never heard, about how they met at a county fair when she was 19 and he was 26, about the dance he asked her for, about the wedding they had in the basement of a church with 8 people. She told stories about Eliza, about what she was like as a baby, about the songs she used to sing her, about the way she had loved, being held facing outward, not inward, because she wanted to see the whole world coming at her. She told stories about leaving, about the day she walked out, the decision she had made the night before, the promise she had made to herself, the way she had cried for 3 weeks after, the way she had still cried sometimes even now. Eliza listened. She didn't say much. She had heard enough words. What she wanted now was her mother's hand in hers, and her mother gave it. On the morning of the 3rd day, Eliza had to leave. She had work on Monday. Harlan was expecting her. She helped Adeline into the wheelchair. She wheeled her out to the porch. It was a small porch, just enough room for the wheelchair and Eliza beside it. They watched the sun come up over the maple trees. The leaves were turning faster now. The mornings were colder. Adeline reached for Eliza's hand. Eliza took it. You'll come back. Yes. You'll write. Yes. You'll bring the dog next time. Yes. A long silence. Then Adeline said, Tell Vernon I forgive him. Eliza turned. What? Wendell wrote me about Vernon, about everything Vernon did, even before you found the letters. Wendell wrote me, he told me, and he asked me to forgive him. Did you? Eventually, yes, I did. The same way Wendell did, the same way you have to, because the alternative is to carry it forever. I don't know if I have. You will or you won't. It's not a thing you decide once, it's a thing you decide every morning. Eliza nodded. She kissed her mother on the forehead. She picked up her bag. She walked down the wooden ramp. At the bottom, she turned around. Her mother was watching her. I love you, Mama. I love you, baby. She walked away. She did not look back, because if she had looked back, she would not have left. And she had to leave, for now, she would come back. She had years now. The bus ride home felt different. The country looked different. She held her father's notebook on her lap, open to the first page, with the date he had started. Eliza's house, started April 2019. She turned the pages slowly. She read them again, the whole way back. She got home at dusk. Miriam was on the porch with Patches. Patches saw the truck. He stood up. His tail started to wag. The closer the truck got, the harder he wagged. When Miriam stopped at the edge of the clearing, he took off running. He met Eliza halfway up the path. He jumped up. He put his paws on her chest. He licked her face. He cried, She knelt down in the dirt. She wrapped her arms around him. She buried her face in his neck. She whispered, "Patches, my mama sent you. My mama. She sent you to my daddy. She loves us. She always loved us. She never stopped." He licked her ear. He did not need a translation. He had already known. He had always known. That evening, Eliza sat at her kitchen table, the table she had built from scrap lumber, sanded smooth, sealed. She set the Bible on the table. She had not opened it since she found the deed. She had been afraid to. What if there was nothing else in it? What if there was something else? She didn't know which possibility scared her more. She opened the Bible now to Psalm 91, the page where the deed had been. She turned the page back, then forward, then back again. A small piece of paper slid out. She had missed it the first time. Maybe because it had been pushed deeper into the binding. Maybe because she had been so focused on the deed. She picked it up. It was older than the deed, much older. She unfolded it. A birth certificate. Eliza Marie Bellwether, born March 14, 2006, 8:47 a.m. Wake County Hospital, weight 7 pounds 4 ounces, length 19 inches, mother, Adeline Marie Bellwether, father, Wendell James Bellwether. Eliza had seen this document before. She had used it to get her driver's license, her social security card. She had a copy in a folder in her old apartment, but this was the original, the first copy, the one given to her father in the hospital, the day she was born. She turned it over. She had never thought to turn it over. On the back, in a handwriting she now knew well, small, round, careful, her mother's stitching turned into ink, a single line. Born of love, always was, always will be. Below it, a date, the same date as the front of the certificate, March 14th, 2006, 8:47 a.m. Her mother had written this on the day she was born, before she had left, before the MS had taken anything, when she was still 27 and her body still worked and her hands were still steady. She had written, born of love, always was, always will be, and she had given the certificate to Wendell, and Wendell had put it in the Bible, and he had carried it. For 19 years, he had carried it through everything, through her mother leaving, through his brother taking, through his diagnosis, through his death. He had put it in the Bible, where he had also put the deed. He had wanted Eliza to find them together because they were the same message, born of love, always was, always will be. She sat at the table. She held the birth certificate in her hands. The kitchen was quiet. The crickets were starting outside. Patches lay on the floor by her feet, asleep. The light from the kitchen window was almost gone. She read the line again, and again, and again. She thought about her mother stitching her name on a tiny pillow 16 years ago. She thought about her father writing her name above a bedroom door. She thought about a man riding a Greyhound bus 4 hours each way, twice a year, for 7 years, to sit in a room with a woman who had left him. She thought about a brother praying for a brother who had wronged him every Saturday for 7 years. She thought about a small town that had carried a man's secret for him until his daughter could carry it for herself. She thought about all the love she had not seen, all the love that had been there. The whole time she had been loved. The whole time she had just not known how to see it. She got up. She put the birth certificate back in the Bible. She put the Bible on the shelf next to the notebook. She turned off the lamp. She walked to her bedroom in the house her father had built. She stood at the door. She looked up at the cedar plaque. Eliza's room. She went inside. She lay down on the bed Miriam had given her. Clean sheets, the wool blanket folded at the foot. Patches jumped up beside her, curled against her feet. She did not turn off the lantern. She just lay there in its soft, warm light. She watched the east window. The stars came out, one by one. She thought, I am not done. She thought, there is so much more to do. The porch railing still needs sealing. The driveway needs gravel. The garden needs to be turned for next spring. I will bring Patches to Bristol. I will see my mother again. I will see her many times. I will help her until I cannot help her anymore. I will let Vernon come back. I will let him build things. I will let him learn how to give instead of how to take. I will work at Harlan's for another year. Then maybe I will go back to school, maybe nursing, maybe carpentry, maybe both. I have time. I have time now, she thought. Daddy, I see you, she thought. Mama, I see you too, she thought. Both of you, all the years. I see all of it now. She closed her eyes. The east window held the first stars. Patches breathed slow and even against her feet. The wind moved through the pines outside. The house was quiet, the house her father had built for 7 years, every Saturday, with his own hands, with his own heart, with the years of his life he had been told he could not afford to spend. He had spent them. He had spent them on this, on her, and she was here, in this house, in this room, in this bed. She was home. For the first time in her life, she was home. And in the morning, the sun would come through the east window, the way her father had meant it to, the way he had planned for, page after page, note after note, Saturday after Saturday, the way he had built for her, so she could wake up with the morning light. She slept. The house held her, the way her father had always meant it to. Outside in the dark, the wind moved through the pines. Somewhere far off, a screech owl called. The dogwood leaves rustled. The cedar plaque above the door reflected a tiny glint of starlight. Eliza's room, and in the room, his daughter slept, held forever by the man who had built the house out of 7 years of love.